So the theme for the year is this idea of practicing the way, and we are asking the question of what did Jesus, as our rabbi, do? Because as an apprentice of the rabbi, there's three goals, right? We want to be with our rabbi, we want to be like our rabbi, and we want to do what our rabbi does. And so the first 4 weeks of this series, we looked at the practice of solitude and really setting time aside in the quiet, in the stillness, to just be with God. And in the next 4 or 5 sermons, we're going to look at the practice of community. So there's solitude and there's community. And these are two really important pillars of spiritual growth. And if you look at the rhythm of Jesus, he would retreat into solitude, and then he would come and re-engage with community. Retreat and then engage, retreat and engage. And if we want to be like our rabbi, community is such an important part of that, because part of what our rabbi called us to do and part of what our rabbi did was to love others, right? If you look at Mark chapter 12, the 2 commandments, one is to love the Lord your God, and in verse 31 it says the second is as this, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. And later on in other letters it says love one another. Well, we can't do that in isolation. We can't do that without community. We can't fulfill one of the greatest commandments unless we are engaged in some level of community. We cannot be more like Jesus unless we are consistently engaged in some level of spiritual community. And in fact, I would say a lot of our spiritual growth is not going to happen when we sit down and just read the Bible or sit down and do some sort of study, but so much of our spiritual growth happens in the context of community. Dr. Joseph Hellerman said this: we either grow together or we don't grow much at all. Yeah, you can grow. Yes, you can progress in your spiritual walk by yourself, but we can't really grow that far without community. From the very beginning, we see that in order for creation to function properly, it requires a community. Genesis chapter 1, verse 26. Then God said, "Let us make man in our image after our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the heavens and over the livestock and over all the earth and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth." And that part right there, let us make man. There have been many theories on who the us is. Most likely, it refers to the heavenly council that we see in Revelation. And so when we look at Revelation, we see the throne room. It's not just God in the throne room. It's God surrounded by this heavenly council of elders or angels or other heavenly beings. Or some would say that it refers to God as Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. I don't know, right? Most likely it's referring to the heavenly council. But what I want us to see is either way, either at the beginning of time or before the beginning of time, God was either in a community surrounded by others, other heavenly beings, or God was in himself a community, 3 in 1. So God had community around him, and God was community. So the very essence of who God is, or part of the essence of who God is God is relationship. And relationship requires community. Someone said, God is family, and God creates family. That's why we look in Genesis chapter 2. It says, "The Lord God said, it is not good that man should be alone. I will make a helper fit for him." The intent and design of creation to function properly requires others around you and with you. It requires community. The way that you and I best function as God's images and creation is actually in the context of community. If you come from Western culture, there's this term that was coined by sociologists called radical individualism. Radical individualism is actually the dominant cultural orientation of people coming from the Western world. So what has happened is over time we have been programmed to prioritize the good of the individual over the good of the community. We have grown up in a culture that says put your own needs, your own desires, your own preferences, your own pursuit of happiness above the needs of any other group, above the needs of your country, above the needs of your workplace, above the needs of your church. Your needs take priority. Your desires, your pursuits take priority over the group. We saw this during COVID. During COVID, here in the more Eastern world, right, what did we say? We're all in this together. We're going to mostly cooperate. We're going to wear masks. You look at the Western world, what was it? Don't tell me what to do. Don't tell me to wear masks. Don't tell me to do this. Don't infringe on my right. The moment you get in the way of what I want to do, I'm going to rebel against that. That is the mindset of a lot of the Western culture that you and I grew up in. No one can get in the way of my pursuit of my happiness. No one can get in the way of my personal freedom. So the result of that has actually been this epidemic of loneliness. Everyone wants to be individuals. People don't want to engage in community as much. People don't want to be told what to do, so they disengage. So there has been this epidemic of loneliness. In the U.S., the percentage of people who say they have no close friends has quadrupled in the past 3 decades. In the past 30 years, the number of people that say they have no close friends has quadrupled. 54% of Americans say that no one knows them really well. Isn't that sad? Half of Americans say, nobody really knows me. Nobody knows my inner thoughts. Nobody knows my secrets. No one knows my past. No one knows me as I really am. 36% of Americans report feeling lonely most of the time. 51% of young mothers and 61% of young adults. Over half of people in America right now, 20 to 30, feel lonely. Feel alone. That's alarming. Vivek Murthy, the former general of the U.S., made waves when he said loneliness is actually the #1 threat to health in America. He claimed that being lonely and the effects of loneliness were worse than smoking 15 cigarettes a day. That's crazy. Studies have shown that loneliness has been linked to everything from anxiety to depression, suicidal ideation, and get this, heart disease, cancer, and dementia. All have been linked to this feeling of isolation and loneliness. It got so bad that the United Kingdom actually created an office in their government, basically nicknamed the Loneliness Minister, to deal with the health issues because of human isolation. Japan, not too long after, created the same thing, someone to deal with isolation and loneliness as a serious health issue. Individualism has led to this issue. So all I want us to see is the lack of community, the lack of engaging in community, the desire to just be individual is killing people. Creation is not functioning properly because people have moved away from the design of God that we exist within the context of relationships. It's killing people. And so maybe, I just want to put this forward, the lack of really engaging intentionally and organically and deeply in a spiritual community is killing our spiritual growth as Christians. There's churches out there that are huge. There's churches out there that are small. But you have to ask yourself, within either one of those cases, is there real, authentic community? And if there's not, we're not functioning properly, and creation is dying because of it. One of the first things Jesus does in his ministry is actually gather a group of community around him. Right? He called the fishermen. Then what does he do? He calls the 12. And then it grows into a larger and larger movement. If we want to do what our rabbi did, our rabbi inserted himself into community. Look at Mark chapter 3, verse 13 through 15. He went up on a mountain and he called to him those whom he desired, and they came to him, right? He's building community. And he appointed 12, whom he also named apostles, so that they might be with him and he might send them out to preach and have authority to cast out demons. So Jesus calls this community. Why? A lot of times we focus on the fact that Jesus called this community so that they could preach, or he called this community around him so that they could cast out demons. But what I want to focus on is the first reason that Mark zeroes in on why Jesus called the 12 is what? So they might be with him. They might be with him. That's it. spending time with him in relationship, so that they implies more than one person. They implies community. Jesus is calling people to be with him. So the picture of Christianity was never just Jesus and me. That is so much easier. If it was just Jesus and me, my life would be great because people would not get in the way of what I want to do. But that is not the way that Jesus operated or calls us to function. And maybe because even though it makes life easier if it's just Jesus and me, it actually inhibits our spiritual growth. Jesus called a community around him. And we're to do the same. Look at Mark chapter 3, verse 31 through 35. And his mother and his brothers came, and standing outside, they sent to him and called him. And the crowd was sitting around him, and they said to him, "Your mother and your brothers are outside seeking you." And he answered them, "Who are my mother and my brothers?" And looking about those who sat around him, he said, "Here are my mother and my brothers. For whoever does the will of God, he is my brother and my sister and my mother." What is he saying? The community of followers of Jesus are meant to operate like a family. We have to understand that back then, I don't know what your relationship is with your family. Could be good, it could be bad. But back then, your closest relationship, your longest lasting relationship, your most intimate relationship is not with a group of best friends, it's actually with your family. I mean, think about it. You lived in a single room house together. You know these people. You've grown up with these people. You work together. You survive together. Your closest, most intimate relationships is with your family. And that's the word that Jesus is using. That's the image that Jesus is using to explain to us what the church community should look like. The word that's used is the Greek word adelphoi. There's some versions of it that's translated as brothers or brethren or brothers and sisters, but the literal meaning of adelphoi is siblings. So Jesus is saying this: it doesn't matter if you're related to me. It doesn't matter if you're Jew or Gentile or whatever. It doesn't matter if you do the will of my Father, if you follow me, if you obey me. I consider you family. The way the church should operate is not as individual people just gathering together to hear this person speaking the Bible. The way that the church should operate, big or small, is as a close, intimate family. Not just a group coming to hear a sermon and then leaving. Not just a group that only connects with each other on Sundays, but a close, intimate adelphoi, siblings, family. So there's this growing body of research in the social sciences that groups relationships based on two things: size and depth of vulnerability. Size and depth of vulnerability. And one of the most widely accepted paradigms of group size is this idea called Dunbar's number from Dr. Robin Dunbar. So there's sort of four spheres, okay? So he identifies what he calls the inner circle. The inner circle is your most intimate relationships. It's usually 1 to 5 people. These are the people that know you as you are and love you as you are. These are the people that know your deepest, darkest secrets. These are the people that know your past. These are the people that understand your motivations. They know you that well, the good, the bad, and the ugly, but yet they still love you as you are. So the intimates could be your spouses, they could be best friends, they could be mentors. But again, half of people in America report having no people in that inner circle. No intimates. Half the people in America say, nobody knows me really well. Nobody loves me as I am. I can't be open and vulnerable with at least one person. I want you to just pause and let's think. Are there people in that category in your life? Are there people that you would say, they know me, they know almost everything about me, and they still love me, and I can go to them and be open? Then beyond that, there's a group called the fictive kinship group, usually 15 to 50, and these are people who are family members or like family members. So they're family or they're friends who are like family. These are the people that we do life with together. These are the people that we call when we need some help moving. These are the people that we call when we need babysitting. These are the people we might go on vacation together. Or if they're sick, we would drop off food for them. We spend holidays together. Our kids spend time together. These are the people that we talk to when we need to make wise decisions, and we kind of bounce ideas off of them, right? So maybe in a smaller church like this would be our fictive kinship group, where there's a group of people, we do life together, right? We hang out together, we have outings together, we share life together. The next threshold is what's called the law of 150. This is a threshold because this research shows is probably the maximum number of people that we can be in a relationship with effectively. Beyond 150, it's really hard to have effective relationship. Do you know people that just seem to have friends everywhere? Right? Like they just get along with everybody. Okay, but the number says beyond 150, they're probably not really effective friends with everybody, right? And so this actually is also the optimal number for human organizations. It's been shown that organizations that are too large become a little bit impersonal, and then they require all these policies and procedures in order to function, right? My workplace has, 600 employees maybe. It just doesn't function really intimately or very well. It's this big conglomerate machine that needs all these policies to function and policies on top of the policies to then hold the other policies accountable. Okay, but less than 150, the organization doesn't have the collective strength or diversity or momentum to really make a lasting change. So, law 150. Most of us could probably say there are people in our sphere that, we have relationship with them, they're acquaintances, maybe they're good friends, but they're not deep, and they're not the people I do life with together. Then beyond that is what people call the tribe, this larger group that you associate with because of your belief systems or something you are interested in. So for example, if you're at a baseball stadium and all the Dodger fans, that's your tribe. Or maybe your political affiliation, that's your tribe. Or this idea of the universal Christian church, that's our tribe. So it's a much larger part of our social circles. So in which layer do we need healthy community in? All of them. All of them. If you look at Jesus, he had an intimate group. He had the three, right, that he was very close to. And beyond that, he had close friends like Mary and Martha, who he treated like very intimate families. Then he had the group of 12, right, disciples and apostles. And then beyond that, he had the larger there was actually in the Bible, the 120 in Jerusalem. And then beyond that, there was the larger movement. Jesus had healthy community in every single one of these spheres. So I want you to just look at that and ask yourself, do I have healthy, faith-building, faith-affirming, faith-empowering community in these spheres? Just take a moment. Do you have intimates? Do you have people that know you as you are? Do you have kinship, people that you do life with as family? Do you have just acquaintances, right, that you're pretty effective in relationship with them? And do you have a tribe that you feel like you belong to? So I've been talking about community, but what is it? So let's just define it this way. By the practice of community, I just mean it's the intentional discipline. I want us to focus on that word. Intentional discipline of actively building highly relational, joyfully connected kinship groups that eat and laugh and pray and worship and follow Jesus together as family. It is a discipline. Let me tell you, every Thursday I go to community group. It takes discipline because what do I want to do Thursday nights? I want to rest. I want to be by myself because I'm introverted, right? Which drives some people crazy. But it is a discipline, and I never regret it because we make excuses to have good food, but we also have good conversations that help my spiritual growth, right? It is a discipline. And if you're lacking community, just like maybe you're lacking solitude, could it be just a lack of discipline? Because it's about a group that comes together with the purpose of worshiping and following Jesus as family. It's not just hanging out. It's not just feeling secure and accepted and having a support system. There's a discipline. Just like solitude is a discipline, community is a discipline. And that is hard to do in this day and age. There's all sorts of challenges to that discipline. There's all sorts of obstacles. There's spiritual warfare, but there's also our own hearts. Because why? Allowing community in and engaging in community takes away my time and my energy. Allowing community in and engaging deeply in community makes me vulnerable to be hurt, but to be heard as well. It opens me up for people to know who I really am. So it's challenging. But this week, I just want to set the stage of the importance of community and remind us that as a discipline, this is something our rabbi did. So what can this look like? Let me give you a very, very simple picture of community. It's in Acts chapter 2, verse 42 through 43. And they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and the fellowship and to the breaking of bread and the prayers. And awe came upon every soul, and many wonders and signs were being done through the apostles. What do we focus on when what church looks like? We tend to focus on they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching. We tend to focus maybe on fellowship. And we tend to focus maybe on the prayers. But we misunderstand the breaking of bread. Because when we hear the breaking of bread, what do we picture? Communion. I grew up Catholic. The entire Catholic Mass focuses in at the end on communion, breaking of bread. That's not what it was. If you really understood this idea of breaking of bread, it's not communion, it's a meal. In fact, it's been referred to as the agape feast in some literature. And what we actually see when we look at church history is the center of gravity of the early church was not in a service, it was at a table. It was not sitting in rows and pews listening to some crazy person up here pontificating about the Bible. It was at a table together. The way you want to picture this was as a feast. And it was usually 30 or 40 people around a table in an open-air Mediterranean courtyard. So picture, just out in the open, 30 or 40 people sharing in a feast, reading scriptures, praying, singing, sharing stories, having wine and bread. That's what church looked like back then. It's not just about communion. An essential part to following Jesus, listen, an essential part to following Jesus is just sharing a meal with a spiritual focus and just being together. That's what it could look like. That's why in 1 Corinthians chapter 11, what does Paul say? So then, my brothers, when you come together to eat, wait for one another. We know in Corinth, the idea of a meal was so controversial. There was all this question of meat sacrificed to idols and all these crazy things happening. But why does Paul say, when you eat? He doesn't say when you sing, when you hear a sermon, but he says when you eat. Because eating was such a large part of how they practiced community. Eating was such a large part of their spiritual formation. If you actually track the story of Jesus, he's either at a meal or coming from a meal or going to a meal. Think about some of the most significant stories in the Bible. Where does it happen? During a meal. Last Supper, right? Prostitute kneeling at his feet during a meal, right? So much of the culture was centered around the table. The service, the way that church services are set up, not a great way to build community because it's very performative. Right? Actually, worship back then, you didn't have a worship leader. People sang together. But what started happening in church culture is we only picked the skilled musicians to come up on stage, so it became very performative and very much just spectator. That's not how it was. Everybody sang together around a table, around a meal. So, church, we started out today, and I just wanted us to see that we have a culture that is literally dying because of loneliness. And that we've been immersed in a culture, grew up in cultures that promoted radical individualism, that said, protect your rights, Protect your feelings, build higher fences, isolate, protect your own interests above everyone else. But what we see is in Genesis, the way God intended creation to function was not as isolated little individuals, but in community, working together with Him and with each other. And it's so critical as a discipline, because I said it earlier, but I'll say it again. Spiritual formation happens in community. Spiritual formation happens in community. If you want to grow more Christ-like, it's not going to happen in isolation. It's going to happen in community. And lastly, I just want to remind us that what does it look like? It doesn't have to be initially this massive, overwhelming commitment. Community can just start over a plate of food. Community just starts at your table. Community starts with you just making salad. It doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be hot pot, although praise God that we get to have hot pot today. You could just order a pizza. You could just go out to lunch. I bet many of us would point to the meals that we've shared together as a very significant part of our spiritual growth. The conversations that happen there, as long as they're Christ-centered, are the ones that actually really encourage and propel us. Not just this. This is not community. Community happens when I shut up, and then you get to engage with each other. Just order a pizza, make tacos. All community needs is an open table, empty chairs, and a willingness to engage. So we're going to do that, right? So by way of just kind of discussion, if we look at the questions, maybe in your own heart, what are some examples of the radical individualism that you've seen around you or in you, in the ways that maybe you say it's more about you than it is about the group? What are some of the personal barriers for you, or common barriers of living more deeply in community? Like really engaging, not just attending, but really engaging. And maybe about the 4 circles of community. Can we put that back up really quick? Where there's the intimates, there's the fictive kinship group, there's the Law 150, and there's the tribe. Anything there just kind of stand out to you? Any thoughts you have about that? Again, you don't have to discuss these questions. It's just guidance. I would rather have you share life and, more importantly, pray for each other at the end than focus on the questions. But let me pray, and then we'll get into it. Dad, from the very beginning,